Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Trail of Trash podcast with Jason Garrett and John. And we are fortunate tonight to have an ultra runner and an editor of an amazing magazine. Um, I've got to read the first episode by episode first. Isn't that sad? I'm immediately going to something to watch, and we're talking about print. Anyway, we got Chad Sullivan from Hard Prairie with us. Thanks for being here, Chad. Sorry, this goes to show you how little I actually get to read other than something on my screen. So,
No,
Just be
it's
glad.
okay. I understand.
Yeah, just be glad
but
you have an easy to pronounce first and last name, because as you've probably heard, Jason cannot pronounce names
unless unless if you were
unless they're
Japanese,
Japanese.
unless they're Japanese,
Well,
because if you listen to the Barkley episode, I did nail the Japanese gentleman's name
I'm
flawlessly.
I'm just
no,
proud you
you
didn't
did.
pronounce you didn't call him Chad Sullivan. Or
Man, if that was how he pronounced his name, that would be
Actually,
so
I would have
awful.
that. I could roll with Chad Sullivan. That's there's something to that.
There's
there's a
something
I
to
little
appreciate
bit
that.
of there's a little
I
bit of
appreciate you. That could be my pen name.
there you go.
So,
Yeah.
so,
What's that
so
show? Oh, it's Corky Romano. We're getting way off the trails already here. Was it Corky Romano where he's like oh no, it's not. It's the guy who plays Corky Romano where his name is Pissant, but they call him Pissant the whole movie. So,
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
so anyway, welcome to the show.
Hey, that's a great intro. I love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. After we butchered it, but welcome to the show. So obviously, before we get into Hard Prairie, which is that issue was awesome that I read. And I'll be honest with you, like for me to be able to sit down and read something is like a big deal because like I just my attention span and it's terrible is like that big, right? But I read like the whole issue from beginning to end, and it was freaking amazing. So before we get to that, um, how did you get into the whole running thing? I mean, were you a track star in high school and it just transferred over, or were you like me and just did it when you got older?
Well, I did run in high school. I wouldn't say I was a track star by any sense of the imagination. I think I stopped running maybe my junior or senior year. I don't know if I ran all 4 years even. I stopped running for many, many years and picked it up again when I was in my 20s. I actually started running as a way to try to stop smoking. I had a horrible smoking habit in my mid 20s, and I remember one day running from the place of that I was working at to my car. I couldn't have been told more than 50 yards, and being completely gassed, out of breath, and just thinking this is ridiculous. I'm 24. I got to do something. So I think that's when I picked up running again. And it wasn't until about 2015 that I entered trail and ultra running. Um, through who eventually became my wife. Actually, my now in-laws live less than a quarter mile from what is the Potawatomi Ultra course in Central Illinois. And so I would go down there and run that course, and while visiting them, and just decided one year to register and sign up for it, and never look back.
So you did that. So you never did any sort of like the half marathon, 5K, 10K. You didn't do any of that. You just went straight into like the ultra type running, or
No, I ran those things. I ran the road races. I I ran them for quite a few years, and it wasn't until I started running trail and ultras that I think I really hit my stride, so to speak, or kind of found my niche as it relates to running. I think running for me was probably tied up into too many other things. I think I was probably running as a way to compensate for some of the unhealthier things I was doing in my life at that time, and and running, I think became a passion for me when I found the trails. And so I would say within the last 9 to 10 years, that my relationship to running has completely changed.
Yeah. I think, for a lot of us, that's, like for me, I think running indirectly has helped my health. Um, I don't even know if I've talked about it on the show, but like I went and I need to go have another one. But I went and had what's called a calcium scoring test, where you go. It's like you pay $50, you lay in the scan, and it scans you to tell you how much calcium you got built up in your arteries, right? And so the name of the game is to have none, okay, or as minimal as possible. And I got my score back, and I had some, and and it wasn't a lot, and it wasn't like an excessive amount, and it wasn't a dangerous amount. It wasn't anything to be worried about. But I had some, and it was in like that main artery in your heart, where if you have to have something done, that's where the widowmaker, if you've ever heard of that, gets installed into. And I was talking to my doctor about it, and he goes, indirectly, your running probably has saved you from a heart attack. He said, because for you to have calcium build up with as much as you run, he said that's bad genetics is what that is. Because as much as you run, you shouldn't have any calcium build up. And so like indirectly for me, running probably helped my health. Um, and that's why I don't plan on giving it up, because like obviously I need it to continue keeping my heart healthy. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, I think running for me is definitely, not only is it for my physical health, but it's for my mental health as well. I mean, I mentioned that I was, running to probably mask some of the more, things that I was doing to myself. And, I mean, I was an addict. I was, an alcoholic. I was doing all those things, in my 20s. I was kind of out of control. But I was masking it well. So nobody was really holding my feet to the fire or questioning me, because I was able to kind of, to fool everybody. And I've since gotten sober, and life is improved dramatically as a result of that. But for me, I found that, running is a mental, outlet for me. If I don't run for a couple of days, I begin to get a little squirrely. It's
mhm.
just there's just something to having that release for me that is highly beneficial. And I know I'm not the only one that speaks to something like that. I mean, I've long ago, I think, left behind the so-called runner's high. But I still need it just to kind of remain even. And so, um, yeah, to me, it is a an equalizer just with regards to my health all around, for sure. No doubt. No doubt.
And I would agree with that. I think, like when I get on the trail, like I ran on the trail 2 Sundays in a row, I can tell you it is far different than running on the road. Like when I get off of the trail, I feel like I'm like Magneto, like levitating up. But you know what I mean? Like that, how like, you're like,
Totally.
ooh,
Yep.
it just feels amazing. And I know there's multiple people on the show that it helps mentally as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I mean, my story is not uncommon. I mean, there's, we encounter addicts and drug, drinkers and stuff like that, and trail run, ultra running all the time. I mean, this is, I mean, what I experienced is just is nothing special. It is what it is. And I've just learned along the way that, more about who I am in the last, 4 or 5 years, and I've been able to compartmentalize a lot of that, and just kind of chalk it up to who I am, and how to, better myself and kind of continue to move forward. And part of it is in that first issue, for example, I kind of wrote, an intro, to an interview I had with a gentleman who was also, in recovery. And so for me, it's a process of learning and just coming to terms with that, and just being open to learning something new about myself every day. And running affords me that really, quite often, quite often.
What is it about ultra running that seems to gravitate towards people who are struggling with addictions and mental health issues and things of that nature? Is it well, no one can hurt me more than I hurt myself, and this is just how I choose to hurt myself kind of thing? Or what is it in your eyes that kind of brought you to this sport in that regard?
Well, I can speak for myself. I don't want to speak for all alcoholics or people who are struggling with addiction, but I'll speak for myself. And I think for me, it's because an addict is always an addict, and so I think in many ways, the trail running became a new addictive outlet for me. Became a new way for me to focus my energies on something that I could make excessive, and building those miles up and doing harder things, and accumulating belt buckles and things along those lines. It became its own drug to a certain extent, and it's obviously I think it's a much healthier outlet, and but I think that there are a lot of parallels between drinking and trail running, in the sense that you start out with 6, and before you know it, you're not satisfied until you hit 12. And sometimes when you are a runner and you are a trail runner, an ultra runner, for example, you might run 4 or 5 miles a day, and for a couple of years that might be your baseline. And then you get to a point where if you run anything less than 7 or 8 miles a day, you feel like it's not, like you haven't accomplished anything. And I think that there's some similarities to that with alcohol. For me, if I had one beer, I had a dozen, and then that's kind of how I was with running. If I started to run, for me, I think my baseline was 8 miles. If I did any less than that, it wasn't good enough. I've changed. I mean, my approach is softened for sure, but I think that there are definitely parallels with regards to just the I mean, I will always be an addict. So, and knowing that about myself, I can recognize it in how I approach the sport and try to keep it as healthy as possible. And just hope that I don't overdo. You know.
Yeah, having my own mental health struggles kind of growing up and relatively severe depression and all that stuff, I turned to this because it was very much a way to show myself that I can do these hard things and I can overcome these things, but not in the, I guess, self-deprecating way of depression can be. It wasn't very much me bringing everyone in with me. Like if I go into this depressive hole, my wife and my daughter come with me, and I can't have that. Like for their safety, I can't have that. So I'm going to go run in the woods where it can be just me fighting my own demons out there. And a lot of times that's exactly what it is. If I tell my wife, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for 4 hours today," and it's not designated in a training block that I got to do that, she knows that I'm fighting through something. And kudos to my wife. I would not be anywhere near where I am without her. And then my daughter came along, and well, like I said, she'll probably pop in here before she goes to bed, and she is the light of my life and the reason that I do everything. So I just wanted to hear another person's take on kind of why we who have issues kind of gravitate towards this. And like I said, it's just because no one can hurt me more than I hurt myself, and this is just my way to show myself that I can do hard things and I'm worthy of a lot of good shit in life. I just got to get it. So
Absolutely. And I think that, and I and I appreciate you being so, your candor with regards to that, because, stuff like that isn't always the easiest thing to come forward and talk about. And I think that, I do think this sport, for whatever reason, the people who are in it are seem to be very comfortable in talking about things like this. At least the people I've encountered seem to be very comfortable in talking about things like depression or anxiety or addiction. And I think, my guess is it's because so many of us within the sport deal with it. And kind of like you were saying, like, sometimes, we might be, whether we know it or not, more aware of certain aspects of ourselves, that running allows us, to deal with. And I mean, I can completely relate to what you're saying with regards to depression. Or I mean, I personally, I struggle immensely with anxiety, social anxiety, like it is. And so for running, for me, was a way to be alone, and I found comfort in that. And for me, that time alone is a reset. And my wife, similar to yours, is very much aware that I need those resets. I work a social job. I come home and I am active with my children, and I am active, trying to engage with my wife, but all of that is difficult for me. And so, running is a way to alleviate a lot of that pent up tension that I feel, that kind of comes with just doing normal things. It's not like I do anything special. I just do normal things, and it's just, but as long as I know that about myself, and we're, my wife is completely on board and supportive, and we're able to get through it.
Is that kind of
And that,
where Hard Prairie came about, to tell these other stories like that? Because you're right. I mean,
um,
we are a very trail and ultra runners are unique, and you're right. We're very open for the most part, in my experience. To most people are open to be like, yeah, I did this because of this, and this is why I continue to do this. Um,
mhm,
do you look to share those kind of stories in Hard Prairie,
totally.
or where's your vision? Where did the vision
Yeah.
start, and how has it changed, I guess?
So the vision started with, I made a website. I made the Hard Prairie website with an eye towards, focusing specifically on Illinois trail runners, what we were doing locally, the events that we were running, not just within Illinois, but around the country. And I was hoping to really kind of garner a community of writers and photographers and athletes, within Illinois, that could just really kind of cast a spotlight on, what I thought was, at the time, kind of an overlooked place with regards to trail and ultra running. And as the website kind of developed and kind of kicked off, I noticed that there just wasn't enough of a market, so to speak, for that, in the sense that there weren't enough. I needed participation, and I wasn't getting enough participation because, quite frankly, it just isn't a large enough group of people. We have a really tight, uh, network of trail and ultra runners in Illinois, whom are incredible, and they do amazing things. But not all of them are interested in writing or sharing their stories. And so, I had to kind of start looking, abroad for content, not for, things, the direction I wanted to take the magazine. And what I realized is that I am not somebody who can just write for the sake of writing. And I like to kind of really dig into the stories that I choose to put out there. And so, um, when my son was born, last July, I kind of decided to step back from the idea of Hard Prairie being focused on Illinois, and take the time that I knew I was going to need to take in order for this to grow, to turn this into a magazine. And when I decided that we were going to make a magazine, I brought in some people. Jenny Thorson, for example, who is our managing editor, who is just a stunning photographer and writer in her own right. Um, and we just kind of decided to really make it a magazine about the sport as a whole, and really dive into the connections that we had, the events that we've covered, and really see what we could do with that. And that's kind of where the magazine, originated. And we weren't sure what was going to come of it, but we put it together, and we put that first issue out, and people responded I mean, it was the response was awesome. Well, I mean, it exceeded anything we had hoped for, and so yeah, I mean, we were totally stoked. I mean, what started as just this small localized thing kind of became what you see now, and we couldn't be happier.
It's a so looking at the magazine, it feels high quality. It doesn't feel like Time magazine or any of these other like People magazine or any of these other weekly printed out just to get it, if it bleeds it leads kind of things. The effort you've put into how it feels high quality. And the first thing that jumped out to me was the picture quality in there is astounding. Is probably the best word I can use. Like you're glued to the pictures and there's so much detail that's captured. And I feel like race photographers, both trail and road, are really good for the most part. There are some who are fantastic at it, at capturing the real emotion. And that is definitely portrayed in the pictures that were in the issue that we got. And it matches. Like the quality of the pictures match the quality of the paper. It's something that I want to put on a coffee table. And be proud that it's out there. And I feel like you should be very proud of the product that you've made because it's top notch.
I appreciate that. And when you said coffee table, that's exactly what we were going for. We wanted to put something out there that felt um, lush and vibrant and heavy. We wanted it to, when you picked it up, we wanted it to feel like it had agency in your hands, right? Like there were, like it begged to be opened. And so we chose to not cut any corners in terms of our production costs with regards to the magazine. um, we chose high quality paper very purposefully. One, because it really, the pictures pop off of that paper, and the photography in that magazine is such that when I sat down to lay out the issue, um, I wanted it to I wanted it to almost feel as if it was somewhat of a gallery experience, like where you could just kind of literally sit back and look at the magazine and kind of live in each ish and live in each photograph. I didn't want any of the photographs to be small. I wanted them to be as large as possible. I wanted, the reader to fully experience not only the words, but the imagery that was coming along with the words, and actually probably in the reverse order. I think that when we designed the magazine, it was probably a very photo first design because we thought that the photos could anchor people into the rest of the magazine. And I think with issue two, I think we've definitely that we've really got that idea across. I think with issue two for sure. I mean, issue one is kind of that I don't want to say it was a test run or a pilot run, so to speak, because we're super proud of it. But I think issue two is really where our vision for what this magazine was going to be from the start kind of really came through for sure.
Well, it definitely has that. I know when I got it, the first thing I thought of was it reminded me of Jessica Vandenbush's "Eat Clean, Run Dirty" quality of magazine, because that magazine is very high quality as well. And that was my first thought when I put it in my hands. So being in Illinois, so like how did you network out? So like I'll use a local guy for example, like Trent for example, um, who did the BFC article. Like how did you get to know, like how did you get in contact with somebody like him?
Yeah, so Jenny Thorson is who, like I mentioned before, she's our managing editor, and she's the photos that you see in volume one are mostly hers. She shoots tons of races throughout the course of the year. She shoots Barkley Fall Classic. She just started doing Mamba down in Memphis. Oh, what else? Uh, I mean, she shoots a lot of Midwestern states. Sorry, she shoots a lot in the Midwest for Ornery Mule. I think she does all of their races. She's been around in the sense that she's at come the summer, she's maybe at a race every weekend or every other weekend, and so she networks a lot. And through that networking, she's made a lot of friends. Photographer friends, for example. And but she's also great at talking to participants in these races and knowing and beginning to know their names and a little bit about them. And so before she and I started working together, she was doing, or she still is, but she was primarily trying to get articles and stuff like that into Ultra Running magazine. And so, in the process of doing that, she would solicit writing from people that she knew had run those events to go along with her photos. And so, in the process of doing that, she met a lot of people who wrote. And when it came time for her and I to sit down and figure out what were the things we were interested in for issue one, she had this treasure trove of names of people that she had just come across the last couple of years, because she and I coincidentally, the first time both of us were published was actually for an article together that we had no idea that we were working on together, and it was for Eat Clean Run Dirty magazine. And so she and I kind of have come up in the last 3 years kind of side by side without really crossing paths until the last year and a half or so. And so a lot of this is through the networking that she had put together. I had some people that I knew through my connections with Eat Clean Run Dirty magazine that was people who met me through stories I'd written for that magazine, who reached out to me for some stuff, and that was great because it got us some connections out in California in that area. And so we just kind of pooled whatever knowledge that we had, and whatever resources we could to kind of get this going. And it's worked. It's really worked well.
Yeah, I think, like a good friend of a friend of the show and somebody I interviewed in my other podcast, and somebody who actually paced John at SCAR, uh, Pete Schreiner, who is an amazing photographer.
It's in
And
book two.
huh?
Yes, he
He's in the
is.
second issue.
Yeah. And so he what's neat about Pete was he just kind of just he just said, I want to do photography. And he just started showing up at races. I mean, whether he was supposed to be there or not, right? And he just started taking pictures, just wherever. I mean, just the guy would just literally roll up at races and just say, like, hey, I'm just here to take photos. And he wasn't like the official race photographer or anything. And now, you look at how far he has came, and his work is like all over the place. I think he did Troublesome Hollow this weekend.
Mhm.
I think he's became the official Yeti Trail Runners photographer. Um, but man, that guy is like super talented. I mean, he made Garrett look like really deep and like interesting, which man, that picture
which
that he took of Garrett, I was like, whoo, I
which
can't
was a
believe that's
race that he
Garrett.
was not supposed to be at that race for photography. He was there to be a pacer, and he just happened to be his runner dropped out at that aid station, so he just did what Pete does, and that's just take really good pictures. So I just happened to see him, and I went over and talked to him, and went back to the aid station because now there were some of the other runners had kind of scattered away, and I was like, man, he's gonna take a picture of me right now, isn't he? And sure enough, he did. And it's a moment in that race where I know something's wrong, but I don't know what just yet, so I don't know how to combat it. And he got this picture of me right on this big exhale, and so my cheeks are puffed out, and it's like, of course, that's the picture you took. Not where I'm like thanking the volunteers or shaking their hands or doing anything fun or exciting. No, you get this somber moment where I'm like, the fuck is going on here? Like,
Okay. But see, you touched on something though, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because Pete's work is in our second issue. And he reached out to me with this story, asked if I was interested in writing it, which I did. And I was aware of Pete's photos for many, many, many months before we started this magazine. And everything that you said about his work is true. His photos are absolutely stunning. But what is appealing to me as just personally, but also as an editor, is that his photos are raw. Like his work is such that it doesn't necessarily glamorize the sport in the sense that it's not, I don't even know how to explain it. He for
Yeah.
example in the second issue, for example, there's the story is about a guy named Michael Patton who is attempting to do an FKT of the Appalachian Trail through Virginia. And there's a photo in there that he took of Michael eating ramen noodles, for example. And it's a close up of Michael's face, right? And it's not the it's not the most flattering image of Michael that you can imagine because he's got the noodles literally just like falling out of his mouth and like he's kind of shoveling them in. His face is somewhat contorted but the fact that he took this photo and it's so real to the situation because we've all been there in a race where you're shoveling food in your mouth, you're shoveling calories in your mouth because you're starved, you're nutrient deprived, you're looking for any way to get energy just to keep going. And there's truth in that. There's truth in Pete's photos that just resonates and emanates from the subjects that he shoots. And that's what I find so appealing about his work, but that's also what I look for with regards to other people's work in the magazine. Like Jenny's work, for example, has that a ton of that. We have Matt Cecil in the second issue, and his work is also incredibly emotive and mysterious and we were fortunate enough also to Howie Stern gave us a photo of Jasmine at the finish line of Barkley here, and he wrote a cool blurb about the moment that he knew that she was going to finish, and it's the photos that are not necessarily the finish line photos to me that are the most appealing, hands down.
Yeah, it's not like a more like mainstream publication like Ultra Running or Trail Running magazine where on the cover you have some elite athlete, they have their, just bright, sponsors gear on, just with the logo where you can carefully place in a photo where you can see it on top of some just beautiful summit. These are, like you said, just all moments that just feel very real to us and just, that we can find really relatable.
That's the whole point. Like I want people to be able to relate to what they're seeing, and what they're seeing is hopefully, resonates with how they felt perhaps at mile 35 in a race or mile 50 in a race. Is sometimes some of these images people are look to be in pain, they're grimacing, they're not comfortable. The cover of issue 1 is just a giant foot. It's literally taped together, and I did that on purpose. That was a very purposeful decision to put somebody's mangled foot on the cover of volume 1 because I don't think that I could have found a better way, in my estimation, to describe the sport as I saw it than somebody's messed up foot. I mean, it's just, and so we're trying to kind of put out something that feels truly authentic to as many people within the sport as possible. And in doing so, sometimes we're publishing photographs or we're sharing stories or writing that isn't necessarily clean, I guess, or polished in the sense that it's not it's not supposed to always make you feel comfortable. Sometimes it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, and we're okay with that.
Right,
Yeah, I
like
think
all the stories, the topics in here. These are things I think about on my run, and these it feels like conversations I've had with people while I'm out running at whether it be a race or just out on an adventure run somewhere. Just
but I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
I think you hit on something that I know Garrett and I and John have talked about it in previous episodes, where we feel like race photographers are kind of unsung heroes of like the race team, because they capture moments that are extremely special for people, because like in Garrett's interest, we'll just use him for example. He was really going through some stuff there, and like to be able to have that captured, it's pretty powerful and cool at the same time, because like a lot of times we don't really see ourselves going through hard stuff, and having a record of that in a photograph where we can look and see ourselves going through a trying time, I think is pretty neat. Um, I
yeah,
wish that Pete would have taken some pictures of John on the backside of Scar when he was pacing him. We
he's
never
got
saw
a
those.
he's got a few. He's got a few out there. But yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
we get those finish line photos, and those look great. But there's a whole lot that happens between the start of a 100-mile race and the end of it.
there is, and I think that when you're right that race photographers are an unsung hero with regards to our sport, because I think our sport is uniquely suited to photography, maybe more so than any sport I personally can think of, in the sense that the environments within which we run in many cases are just stunning environments. They're beautiful, they're complex, they're the lighting is unique, the terrain is something special. It's not just a field. And so if you have a photographer who's out there who's actually, who is able to capture not just the runner, but the runner within the context of the race, the actual terrain on which they're running. I mean, it's a really beautiful thing, and it really speaks to what we as runners go through. I mean, it speaks to our training. It speaks to the preparation that we put in prior to that moment that's coming. Because you take a photo of I'm thinking of, there's a photo, for example, that in volume 2 that Matt Cecil took of just one person running through this forest, and it's just vines everywhere on the ground, and it's just knotted and gnarly, and the lighting is dim and dark, and you see this one runner kind of jumping over I don't know if it's a log or something, but when to see a person in this environment, it speaks to me. It tells its own story, and to be able to capture that is just, it's something special. And I think that we have some really remarkable talented photographers. And if my goal is to be able to showcase as many of them as I possibly can, because it's just, I think what they do is spectacular. And as somebody who has no talent with a camera, I'm always in awe of what they're able to capture.
Yeah,
Always.
I think when it's interesting you talk about Jasmine, because I think one of the most powerful photos I've seen recently is, and I don't know who took the photo. It's the one of her draped over the gate with like spit hanging out of her mouth, like it's like you can feel the exhaustion and
Mhm.
relief.
I, I think that was Howie Stern that took
Wait,
Yeah,
that.
was
that's how we
that took
stern.
that one? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I,
It's
I,
at the back of the second issue as well.
I
Well, yeah,
mean,
he's yeah.
I mean, that is such a powerful photo. And, it was
Mhm.
all over Twitter. It was all over the internet. You saw it everywhere, right? I mean, you still see it all over the internet. But, like, when you talk about emotions and feelings, and like you're not there and you can't understand what she's going through because of the sheer magnitude of what she accomplished, but at the same time you see it in her face. Like you see, like, I mean, it's just exhaustion. It's exhaustion, exhilaration, relief, everything all in one. And I mean, and that to me is something that's really hard to replicate. Like,
Totally.
I mean, it's just very, very powerful. And I mean, I
Totally.
know that that's one of my favorite things is I try to follow as many race photographers on Instagram as possible, because I love like just looking at people running and seeing their
Yeah,
emotions. You know what I mean? Because
totally. And then
I mean, because I always look like death in mine. So
I mean, I agree. And our cover for volume 2 is Emily Cameron took that image, and to me it it jumped out to me because I felt like the woman who was being photographed was obviously not expecting anybody to take a photo at that point in time. It's simply her adjusting her headlamp. But to me, there's a story behind it. She's obviously in the middle of the night. The race was, I think she was racing no business. Um, there was just something about the lighting of it that spoke to me, and that's what they're able to capture. And that a cover like that for volume 2 is so open to interpretation. It's kind of why I chose that photo. Is that so many people can read so much from that image, and it kind of hopefully it's alluring enough to get people to open the magazine up, and we talk a lot about the photography, and the photography is stunning, and it's remarkable, and our goal with that is to pair that with words and writing that is equally good. And I feel like we're able to do that. We've been able to find some really talented writers to really pour their hearts out into the pages of this magazine, and we're really proud of the writing in it as well. And so overall, we feel like we've been able to kind of um, put together something that stands alone, hopefully, within the trail and ultra running, kind of the, I don't want to say the culture, but something that people can, I guess, identify, and relate to, really.
Yeah, you touched on it there. We have talked a lot about for the photographers because that's what most people do when they look at a magazine. They look at the pictures first, right? If we're being honest. But
Mhm.
the writing there is very real and raw and emotional, and it matches the photography. And when you read the articles, it's almost like, yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about in this and things like that. So kudos to you on that regard too. How do you find your writers, I guess? Because Jason mentioned Trent. Um, how do
Mhm.
you kind of find those guys?
Well, I mean, Pete actually came to me with the stories, and so uh, I wrote that story, but quite often people come to us with story ideas, and so um, they'll come to us with story ideas, or we had a woman in volume 1, Laura Presley, who wrote this incredible article about her experience at Barkley Fall Classic, and her writing is just unbelievably good. And that was somebody that Jenny knew, and there were in volume 2 a couple of people I knew from the local racing in Chicago. I was interested in getting their perspective on some things, and so I reached out to them and asked if they would be willing to contribute, and they did, and it's fun because I'm asking some people who I've become friends with over the last couple of years to jump on board and kind of share in this vision that I have, and kind of have faith in me to appreciate and respect their words and their outlook and their perspectives enough to really package their experiences in a really beautiful way, and that means a lot to me that people have faith that we can do that for them, and so when people come to us with story ideas, we not every story is ideal for our magazine, and so sometimes we do have to say no. And that doesn't mean that their story isn't valid. It just means that sometimes it just doesn't fit, and then that's okay. So but I mean, we try to be as open to as many experiences as we possibly can, and that typically is just is a group decision, between myself and Jenny, and so yeah, I mean, we're really trying to be as diverse as we possibly can, and that is our goal with this, is to open the people's eyes to just the true diversity that's in the sport, and shed light on that.
So what is your long term vision for the do you have one, or are you just kind of right now in the here and now and just kind of filling things out on the direction you're taking it?
So we right now we're quarterly. So we just opened up the magazine for subscriptions through the remainder of the year. And so our goal is to continue being a quarterly magazine until uh, from here on out. We want to continue to grow it. The magazine doesn't have any advertisements in it right now. We would like to introduce some advertising into the magazine at a certain point, not a ton. We'd like to, limit it to maybe just like 2, 3, 4, ads in like the beginning of it, just to, because it, quite honestly, it does free us up to do more with the magazine. I mean, ad money allows us to do cooler things. I mean, we can, go and utilize some of that money to cover, different stories. And so, it's as much as, it's right now it's all grassroots and it's all self-funded, and we're all, trying to just really make this really rad thing with, on a shoestring. And so our goal is to grow this. Our goal is to make this viable and to make this truly, a um, just a magazine that feels that we don't want the heart of the magazine to go anywhere, and but our goal is that we would like this magazine to reach a larger audience. Right now it's still very small, and that's okay. And it allows us to grow naturally and organically, and and frankly, it frees up our ability to tell some really incredible stories. And we still want to be able to do that, but at a certain point in time, we've also got to look at it realistically from the perspective of a business, and we've got to evaluate how we're going to move this forward as a business. And so doing it smartly, and with readership first and foremost, we will look at ways to kind of bring in some advertising, just for because in the end, I think it will benefit the direction the magazine is able to head. And truthfully, it'll allow us to keep that top end talent coming to us with their photos, with their writing, and that's crucial for us. We want to be able to bring the best out in every issue. So yeah.
Do you want to stay subscription based, or do you want to maybe find your way into some brick and mortar, like Eat Clean Run Dirty is in some, I don't want to call them specialty, but specialty run stores. You kind of got to know where you're looking to go find it. Is that something that you're interested in? Like, there's a store here in Nashville called Cumberland Transit that I think would be a great spot if you ever thought about maybe branching out and getting away from subscriptions. They may be a good
Mhm.
spot for your magazine. That's Jason Thinnell is one of the guys who runs that store. Or in places like that. Have you thought about that at all, or is that
Yeah,
too
we're
long term?
always no, not at all. We're always open to something like that. In fact, we talked with some people about exploring that option, and I think with stores that are independently run, um, I like the idea of doing that for sure. I don't know exactly what that looks like, to be quite honest with you, yet. That's something that we would have to discuss probably with the store owner in terms of how that would shape up. I know with with a lot with, for example, if we were to look at getting into a place like Barnes and Noble, for example, it probably wouldn't be financially, um, it probably wouldn't make sense for us, because at the end of the day, they buy the magazines, but then whatever is not sold, we have to buy back. And so it becomes a way to get, our magazine in front of people, but it's not necessarily a lucrative way of doing doing business, especially, that we would still have to produce on the front end all of these issues. And so I just don't know how we could feasibly do that right now. But
I will admit, I don't remember the last time I bought a magazine from Barnes and Noble, let alone subscribe
right.
to a magazine I bought from Barnes and Noble.
I know. I know. And the thing is I love magazines, but I love books. I don't ever peruse the magazine section in Barnes and Noble myself. And so I don't know if that makes sense for us. I would love to have it in stores, but I think we would have to find a way to do that makes sense for us, for sure. Um, and so yeah, we just want to grow this. I mean, we don't want it to. We're not looking for this to be, I don't know. We want this to be accessible for people. We want people to be able to get this in their hands. We want this to be something that's viable. We're not looking to make, a ton of money on it. We're looking to just, we're looking to be able to just financially do it at all. And so really we're just, we're going to keep plugging along, and we're going to make this really rad magazine along the way. We're going to grow it. It's going to be here. And our goal is just to keep coming out with issues every 3 months.
It's awesome. I guess before we start trying to wrap things up, we jumped away from your running, and I want to jump back to it just real
Yeah,
fast.
for sure.
But do you have like, I know we were briefly chatting before we came on, any goal type races that you're looking to like get into in the future? Like there's like a local guy here, and we just interviewed him last week. He somehow got into Hard Rock with like a 4% chance or something. But I mean, are you content with just kind of staying locally to where you're at? Are you wanting to, do some traveling and check out some other races? I mean, are there like any like, big races that you're looking to get into or anything like that?
I've always wanted to do Cruel Jewel. For the last couple of years. I've wanted to do that, and I one of these years I will. There's something about the allure of that race. I've been fortunate enough to have worked on a project with the race director, Sarah Snyder. She's an amazing woman, and having worked on a project with her and just kind of getting to know her a little bit, and hearing her talk about the race and hearing others talk about the race and the reputation of the race and how difficult it is, it's got its hooks in me. So I do at some point want to try that race. Maybe next year. We'll see. It's all gonna come down to timing in terms of family and work obligations and stuff like that. I don't want to sign up or say that this is going to be the year, or whatever year that is, without knowing that I'll be able to put in the work. I don't want to sell myself short, or take up a spot that somebody else could certainly use. So, but that's the one for sure. Cruel Jewel. And I mean, Western States would also be fun. I kind of liked. I went out there a couple years ago. I did the training weekend and Memorial Day just to hang out, and I was actually writing a story out there, and that's a cool course. It's just iconic, and it's a really cool course, and I just think being a part of that for a weekend would be fun for for obvious reasons. It's a special race, and it's a pretty unique experience for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, all right, fellas. So I guess before we sign off, anything else we want to talk to Mr. Sullivan about?
You're from Chicago?
I am, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
All right, let's
I
do
have
it.
a very soft spot for some Portillos.
Do you? Oh
I
man.
love Portillos. So I'm from Southern Indiana, but I went to
Okay.
school in Northern Indiana. And the minute I found out about this place, we were actually, so I played college soccer. We were over in the Chicago area where my coach was from. And he said, "Hey, we're stopping this place. It's called Portillo's." I'm like, "What is it?" He goes, "It's hot dogs, but they're hot dogs on steroids. It's about the best way I can describe them." And so, where do you stand on Portillo's and where do you stand on deep dish?
Oh,
And
good questions.
where's the best deep dish in town? Because everyone's gonna say it's Lou Malnati's or Giordano's, but everyone
Yeah.
knows there's another place in town.
All right. Well, I'm gonna. Ooh, wow. At the risk of alienating a lot of fellow Chicagoans here, I prefer thin crust.
Oh,
I
okay.
I
Okay.
do. Yeah, I'll have a thick crust pizza every now and again. I don't have a preference for a spot.
Because Gino's
I
East is underrated and kind of slept on. No, when
It
it comes
is,
down
but
to yeah.
the one that was close by where I live actually closed. So that's no longer a choice. For me, yeah, I do. I like my thin pizza. I like the crispier, the crust personally.
You're a New York
With
style guy, man.
I know, right? It's I know. I mean, yeah, I we have a lot of Midwest readers. I might be alienating quite a few of them. No, and then with regards to Portillo's, I am a huge fan of their hot dogs, and their burgers are not to be missed. Personally, it's just, to me, it's a very simple burger, but it's really tasty. The beef, eh, the beef is what it is. But I will completely agree with you with regards to the hot dogs and the burgers and the fries. The fries are
Oh, their
also very
fries,
tasty.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah, yeah.
Chicago style dogs are hands down the best hot dogs, and you better not
I
put ketchup on it.
totally agree.
There is no room for ketchup on a Chicago style hot dog. Just
On a
don't.
Chicago style hot dog. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, if you're gonna do it Chicago style, no ketchup. But I also put ketchup on hot
I mean,
dogs.
if
Not with
if
all
you're
the
at a
other
backyard
fixings, but
barbecue and there's
yeah,
nothing else that
yeah.
you can, it's acceptable. But
It
if I
is.
see ketchup on a Portillo's hot dog, I'm slapping it out of their hand. Like,
If it's got all the other stuff on there, it doesn't need the ketchup for sure. There's no question about it. Yeah, no
Jason's
question
looking at
about
us
it.
like, what is a Chicago style hot dog? Like,
Oh man. I
if you've
You
not had
gotta if
one, you just don't know. Like, you've got to
Yeah,
have
you
them.
just don't. You don't. Yeah, it's almost too much stuff in one single bun, but it's
It
awesome.
works. It
It
works.
does.
Um,
It really does.
that was the thing that was eating at me the whole time. Pun intended
No,
on the
I'm
food
good.
there. um,
All right, John, do you have anything else?
Um, Real quick, I was going to ask, you kind of alluded to it before. Illinois isn't exactly a state that a lot of people associate with trail running. Are there any like races, areas for trail running or any like runs in your area that you would recommend to someone from outside of your area?
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. Illinois is known for being exceptionally flat. It is, right?
Mhm.
There is a pocket of trails and events in central Illinois in this Pekin Peoria area where you can get 100-mile race with like 16,000 feet of vert. But there's one that's not advertised hardly anywhere, and so hardly anybody outside of the area really knows too much about it. But it's called Crimea River, and it's held in July, and it's 100-mile race if that's the distance you choose. But it's got like just shy of 24,000 feet of vert in it, and it's tough.
but
It
now,
is because it's literally like, I mean, you're talking Illinois here, so you don't get your straight ups and your straight downs. It is just death by rolling hills, and it is really, really, really tough. I
and I
think they've
think
only had one person do it in less than 24 hours or two. And I think he's done it twice. Nobody else has done it in less than 24 hours.
Is that early July or late July? Because that'll make a difference a little bit on how hot that race can get.
It sucks.
Because
It's
July and
I,
August in the Midwest are the
yeah.
worst months in any part of the country, right there. Like it's
Yeah,
terrible.
I want to say it's like mid. So they started on a Friday at noon and then it goes through like Sunday afternoon or something like that. And I mean, I think one year they had maybe only like 8 people finish it out of 50. I mean, it's not an easy race at all. I mean, you talked about the weather. I mean, 2 years ago, I think they had a flash flood situation where a guy got kind of carried downstream a little bit. They had, I think they had to stop the race for a period of time last year because there were tornadoes in the area. I mean, it's just so you're dealing with the elements on top of a ton of vert, and it's kind of a really well kept secret in Illinois. I guess now the secret's out, but it's I highly recommend if you're looking for something that's truly deceptive because you're not expecting that in Illinois. Crimea River is the race, no doubt, no doubt.
There you go, John. You going to run it?
I know I'm not a hot weather runner, so I'll have to
Yeah,
I'll have to
John's tried his hand in an Illinois race, and it did not go well for him. So
No, which one?
50-50. Shawnee Hills.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's when it's humid, running in Illinois is awful. It just sucks. It's but it's what we got, right?
Well, well, we actually got news today that a guy died at the Rock and Roll Nashville Marathon this weekend. At the end of it, it's a portion of the course uh, called Shelby Park, and he was 25, and
Oh
no
man.
details have came out yet. I'm guessing that it must have been heat. That race is it's tough. It's my only road marathon I've ever have participated in, and I've not participated one since then because it was I ran it the year that they had to stop the race because it was so hot. Thank God I got to finish before they stopped the race, but Nashville is deceptively hilly.
Mhm.
Um and and that race is very hilly, and people can overheat, and the time of year that it's in, it can be a mess. But anyway, it's just talking about crazy hot races and stuff. I mean, and it's rough here in Tennessee. You got to come down and hold on, my weekly pitch. You got to come down and run Strolling Jim. You got to do it. It's a road race, 42 miles. Laz puts it on.
Yeah.
Uh, he insults you throughout the race by writing paint on the road that stays there year round. Like my mother runs these hills. Um, you know. Um, anyway, it happens the first weekend of May in this little podunk town here in Tennessee, and it's 42 miles, and I pitch it every episode. I don't think a single guest has who hasn't ran it has came and ran it yet. So we're just going to continue pitching it to people,
All right.
and hopefully at some point get somebody down here to participate in it, because
All right. We'll see.
it's on a
Yeah.
level of suck. It's pretty high because one, it's hot. Two, the course support is trash. And three, you're most likely going to be chased by some sort of dog at some point in the race because you're literally in the country for 99% of the race. So yeah.
You might have lost me with the dog. You might have. I
I
don't know
mean,
if I
it
want to be
look,
chased by a
it
dog.
makes you go faster, my friend. Okay, it makes you go,
Yeah,
All
I
you have to
guess.
do is make sure you're running near someone and then just run a little bit faster than them.
which is what I
Yeah.
did. I was in a group of three, and one person was faster than me, one person was slower than me. So it did not affect me.
See,
If you
you were
catch
Yeah,
my
good.
no.
drift,
As
I
long
was
as one
good.
person's slower. Yeah.
So you got to just put yourself with somebody who is a little bit slower than you, and your money once they start chasing you. But
All right, duly noted.
all joking aside, it's one of the oldest ultra marathons in the United States, um, and it is a true classic and a gem, and everybody should run it at least once, right, John? One time.
I would agree with that statement.
See, one time. All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
All right, so
It's on my list.
my pitch is officially over. So now we can get down to the nitty gritty. Before we sign off, Chad, tell everybody how they can subscribe, how they can follow you, all of the details regarding Hard Prairie
Yeah.
and in your socials.
Yeah, no, it just if you go to Hard Prairie, www.hardprairie, all one word, .com. You can subscribe there. There's a link on the website. You can follow us on Instagram at Hard Prairie. And yeah, no, that's how you can kind of follow along with what we're doing. But I can't thank you guys enough. It's been great. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a great time. And for our local folks, the magazine has Tennessee all up in and around it. So,
Yeah.
for folks who likes to read about stuff races going on in Tennessee, this is the periodical for you. So, so with that being said, um, that is it. So, until next time, we will see you guys later. Everybody have a grand evening. See ya.